Welcome back everyone to another Company of Heroes 2 replay cast, and this time it is going to be a 3v3 as you can see on Winter. On the left hand side we can see Lorgies playing as the OKW, of course, Bong as the Wehrmacht, and Duffman as the OKW. On the opposing side we're going to have Royal Koala as the Soviets, Sternpanther using the Brits, and John Bravo playing as the Americans, already going with the infantry company. So of course, Winter, campy piece of SHIT map, so you need to be very careful. The replay was uploaded by Sternpanther, so I'm expecting to see some maybe Sim Cities coming out of him. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Very good players all around, so this should be interesting. Yeah, it looks like the Germans are pretty much focusing heavily on the left-hand side because that's where they're closest to the fuel point. Not Leon Forest, sorry. I'm just so used to seeing Leon Forest on team games that I just forget that other maps exist. Anyway, basically, Winter has fuel points that are very close to one base or the other, and then the VPs, the way the map positions them is so that they're very, very exposed, so capping them puts you at a disadvantage. It can allow your enemies to easily place down a lot of fire on you, as Bong is trying to do with this MG42, which will work. As you can see, he's already pushing away the infantry section from Sternpanther. Sternpanther does have a universal carrier, but if the universal carrier gets in the firing range of the MG, especially if it shows its rear armor, it's not going to be easy to survive. In fact, yeah, the universal carrier can't really do too much. I mean, it's using its little tiny Bren to fire off of these Volksgrenadiers, but with these infantry sections being suppressed the way they are under heavy cover by the MG42, it's not going to go well for the Allies in this engagement. There's a lot of Germans coming through. Unfortunately, the Sturm Pioneers are forced to retreat by the Vickers, so very good placement from the Vickers as well. The infantry section is also forced away, so both of the advanced units for both sides are back. Like, predictably, of course, the right side goes to the Allies and the left-hand side to the Germans. And in the center, the universal carrier is still trying to essentially absorb MG42 fire for his other units, like the Vickers, but it's not really working out as, you know, there's only so much damage this thing can take. While its armor is fairly good at the front, before anything like armor-piercing rounds start coming into play, it's really not going to be enough. It's going to need to get itself some repairs. Of course, this is going to have to come by either the rear echelon troops for John Bravo or the engineers for Royal Koala, but both of these units seem to be quite far away doing other things that are important to do. Because, of course, no sappers. Platoon command post is up for Sternpanther, but he doesn't have any sapper squads yet. And ooh, here comes the machine gun, gonna force itself into a building, and this is not good for the Allies. However, John Bravo does have the counter, which is a flank. He's managed to get himself quite a lot of territory to the east and the south, so he can bring in his riflemen from the rear. However, here comes the Sturm Pioneers, of course. Once you put yourself in a flanking position, you are yourself at risk of getting flanked, as these riflemen discover to their ill health. Right now they're getting completely smashed by these Sturm Piles. They also get a little tiny bit of suppression juice from the MG42, so there's a pinning and a lot of suppression for the Axis. And they do manage to force away the Allied units in some part, but overall, it's just too much firepower coming through, and the Penals flanking the other MG42 is going to force the rest of the German force to back away. One Raketenwerfer was purchased by, I believe that's Duffman. Yeah, that is Duffman, as well as Lorgis. So both of the OKWs smartly going with a lot of Raketenwerfers, knowing that there's a universal carrier and knowing that it's very likely that other light vehicles were coming from the Allies in the early to mid-game, just to try to use that advantage as much as possible. And, well, preparing against that. So that's very good. And another MG forced away. So Bong really going for that MG spam with 3 MGs into a tier 2, actually, with the Leicht Mechanized Company. No infantry company. That's an interesting choice, considering that the Axis team needed MG support, and, of course, there's only one Wehrmacht. With the OKWs being unable to build the MG34 until they set up at least one HQ, and the MG42 being qualitatively superior to the MG34, it seems quite rational to go with only one person spamming MGs. However, I'm not sure about not going with the infantry company, because this is putting him at risk of being outranged by these mortars, because, of course, without the ability to build your own mortars, and with the OKWs only really having support guns, so again, after battle headquarters, having to wait for that, yeah, it's going to be hard for the Axis to counter the Allied fire superiority at long range. As well as some interesting choices. So we have a Wasp. Wasp is going to be pretty useful against the buildings that are pretty scarce on this map, but they do exist. And quite a lot of fuel cache action. Well, quite a lot for the beginning. We have a fuel cache for Royal Koala. That's a pretty good choice, although kind of a weird choice to have Royal Koala build those, because he has gone with the terror tactics, so he's got shock troops of 390 manpower apiece, which is pretty pricey, and he's also gone for a sniper, so quite a lot of manpower intensive activities. But the Germans make a pretty big mistake and leave this building unattended, so the Allies can just kind of get a conscript squad in and get some harassment on the German troops near the base. However, of course, incendiary grenade forces them away quite easily. Support gun has been built, of course, by Duffman, because that's pretty important. And a pretty big German forces heading towards the right-hand side of the map. Bong putting up all of his MGs, and, well, he's also building another one, but all of his current MGs on this right-hand side push is a pretty big mistake, in my opinion, because look at this flank. It's very, very exposed. It's a huge slab of territory. It's only 2 points, but it's a pretty big amount of actual territory to cover with 3 MGs. And his allies need the support of these MGs in the center. This is an area that is really ruled by indirect fire and suppression. Of course, these Volksrangers get really lucky that the the Vickers was repositioning right at the moment that they start their push. So they managed to get a bit of a glimpse of the mortars and force them out, but you know, they should have been, by all rights, being suppressed in the ice. They didn't do that, and also a couple of a nice flank from Lorges. This is putting the Allies into a bit of a rough spot, but the flank here is going to get shut down by the sniper, which has a pretty good firing position from the rear, and the Penals getting an excellent satchel charge on those Storm Pioneers. Maybe they're even going to get wiped because they're retreating through negative cover, so this is actually pretty bad, but these sappers first focused their fire on the Volksrangers. They managed to switch that along with the sniper. I think that was the sniper killing the last of the Storm Pioneers. They managed to get the wipe, so that is a pretty big wipe. And as you can see, this is exactly what I was worried about for Bong. He's already getting flanked by just a captain. So imagine once the riflemen start getting into play, and in fact they flank another of the MGs which had turned around to face the captain. And so right like that, 2/3 of the MG force for Bong on the right side has been forced away. Of course, he's also brought in a 4th MG, but it's just not good. It's not what he should have done considering his situation. He's not really the guy to harass a flank and trying to at least force the enemy to send some troops there to stop it, because once they do, and if they get a good flank, then there's a possibility that they get an MG42 for themselves by capturing it. So that would be a very, very high risk for very, very little reward, because I'm guessing that this flank is going to get overrun soon enough. Although they do manage to get the wipe on the captain, that's a pretty okay little wipe. That's 330 manpower to replace. Am I right? Yes, 320 manpower. And not only he went with a questionable strategic choice by heading to the right side and leaving his allies without MG support, he's also gone with a mortar half-track. In fact, 2 mortar half-tracks. So that is a lot of fuel usage, and that is also going to be a lot of well, in general, resources that are not poured into actual combat units. That's making him even less, even less, well, damn, even less, like, adept at just defending one position autonomously. He's really reliant on his ability to support his allies with these units. He doesn't have any versatile combat units in his arsenal. So even his Panzer Grenadiers, which are his only like real versatile anti-infantry, he's upgraded with Panzerschrecks, so just making him an anti-vehicle. He's really going with the build of a support player, but he's going autonomously. And that's, of course, costing him and his team, because his team is lacking support. Right now, there's a lot of Soviet coming through, and the left-hand side is probably going to get harassed by these 2 Penals. If they can manage to focus fire down these Volksranger squads, they're going to have a good position. This is a nice flame grenade spot, of course. They do manage to get that, but, of course, Royal Koalas did see through that quite easily. In the center, the Brits do have their mortar pit. That means that this central position is going to be very, very difficult for the Germans to assault. Of course, with 2 support guns coming through for Duffman, it's going to be a little bit easier. The support guns can try to suppress the mortar pit by putting it under brace, and either doing that or forcing it to counter battery the support guns. And of course, here comes the brace, because also the flame grenades are coming through from those Volksgrenadiers. Right now, the British infantry is being completely massacred, actually, by these Germans, and that's a very, very good thing for them. Well put together assault. I mean, he saw that just the center was pretty weak for the Allies, and so he kind of just pushed through all of his guys in a massive human wave, which worked out fine. He almost managed to get the 3-inch mortar. He, of course, couldn't get the Rakenwer for 43 to set up in time to fire. It's still kind of a misclick to not get that thing an attack order on the 3-inch, but that's fine, honestly. He probably is going to be able to destroy it with the mortar. Yeah, got it well, very well. Along with the support, of course, of the mortar half-tracks. And yet another big, giant, harassing wave on the right side for Bong. He's lost one of his MGs, quite crucially. I wonder where that went. Well, John Bravo does not have any MG42s. That's a Vickers. And that's no MG. So I have no idea what actually happened to it. At least this time, he's got a little bit of a use for his Panzerschrecks in the form of a Stuart. Of course, the Stuart itself is going to be able to smash up these MG42s quite quickly. But here comes... Oh, wow. That Stuart's lucky that that first Panzerschreck missed. Still, with LMG42s coming through, not LMG42s, sorry, M1919s coming through for the riflemen, it's going to be pretty hard for him to hold aside, even against an enemy that is floating 1,000 manpower. Also because we have a little bit of a redeployment for Sturmpanther. After he lost his mortar pit, he decides, hey, I should probably be a little bit flexible with this. He sent his infantry squads to the right side, which is going to help putting this whole side back together into Allied hands. Of course, this one MG42, 2 MG42s aren't going to be able to do anything, because also they aren't really mutually supporting. As much as this MG is covering the flanks of this MG, if something happens to come through the center, this MG isn't going to be able to do anything about it. Of course, here comes the riflemen, and they're going to be able to get a nice burst of machine gun fire off of that 42 team. Even getting a smoke off, yeah, this is just not good for the Axis. They're going to have to be retreating, and this MG is dangerously close to being wiped. It's not only Vet 2, but of course, with so much Allied infantry being in the neighborhood, they're going to be able to easily recrew it, perhaps with these sappers. Very good. So, thus giving the Allies yet more firepower to deal with the Germans. This is exactly why I thought that Bong going to the right side was a terrible choice. He should have really stick to the center and let or just told in the chat, Duffman or Lorges, send his guy to harass the right side. I mean, they have Volksgrenadiers, they have versatile combat troops, they have cloaked Raketenwerfers that can come in and support against vehicles and then quickly get out with their retreat ability. It's just overall kind of puzzling that the OKWs are going through the center with the infantry, of course, along the lake where there's no cover, whereas the guy with the MGs, who should be in the lake defending the area, helping to provide support with the mortar half-tracks, is going to fight alone on the right side versus Americans of all factions, you know, the most versatile faction in the early to mid game. Right now, there's a Centaur on the field for Sturmpanther, which is a very, very good choice, because I believe the Centaur does have the ability to break ice with its 30 millimeter. Is it 20 millimeter? 20 millimeter. And of course, it's going to be very, very strong against enemy infantry. Damn, that was unfortunate. Yeah, literally, unfortunately, because damn, it's very, very rare that from that retreat path you hit a mine, but that's exactly what happened. But right now, as you can see, the Allies, thanks to the support also of this MG42, are pushing on the right side. The problem for the Allies right now seems to be the lack of... Was that a Katyusha? Yeah, that's a Katyusha. Damn, very good. 7 kills. The problem for the Allies seems to be the lack of AT. Sturmpanther has an AT sniper, and he had an AT section, but he's lost it. I think it was these two poor blokes who died. John Bravo has a Stuart, which is light anti-vehicle, and of course the anti-tank guns 57mm just purchased, which is a very, very good purchase, whereas Royal Koala does not have anything. I mean, unless the enemy units happen to just come through the ice, that way he can satchel charge them or use the Katyusha to try to break the ice. Oh damn, the AT sniper's in trouble. Needs to run. Okay. And so, if the Germans were able to get some medium armor right now, it would be very bad for the Allies, but it seems like the Allies have the fuel superiority quite just firmly into their grasp. Of course, free fuel caches on their side of the map with artillery just constantly pounding on the Germans. The Germans seem to be in a worse position when it comes to manpower, except for Bong. But Bong has, of course, used a lot of his fuel onto these two mortar half-tracks, 80 fuel, which could have been the upgrade for Phase 3 right now. Of course, he's gone for support armor core and he has Stug, so that's pretty okay. It's pretty okay for him. Oh, damn. Here comes another wipe on that infantry section. I think that Sturmpanther with his 630 manpower right now should probably rebuild. He's going for sappers. Could he be going for anvil tactics to get the heavy sappers? Oh, right. He's got tank counter infantry sections. So he's going to replenish some of his infantry section losses with tank hunters. Of course, 2 boys rifles are going to be okay against light vehicles, but, I mean, the longer the game goes... Oh, this could be dangerous. Wiped. Of course, very good usage of that munitions. Yeah, speaking of munitions, Bong has gone with Festung support. Really now. That does give him the smoke bombs and later on the sector artillery, but of course he's got 360 munitions that he could be using planting mines. Of course the problem for him is that he's only got 1 engineer squad, so he can either use that for harassment or repairing or planting down mines. I would suggest with 1,200 manpower to go at least 1 more, if not 2 more engineer squads. Also, going with 1 extra Panzer Grenadier squad would be very good for him, so that he can get some extra Panzer Shreks. Of course, he's got lots of munitions, so that should be no problem. Right now, the Stuart gets behind the enemy, and because of no munitions, cannot use point-blank engine shot behind it, even though it was literally point-blank to the engine. And right now, the Stuart is in trouble, because the Stug managed to get behind it with its excellent mobility and face its frontal armor to the enemy. Of course, nice usage of the house, gonna allow the Stuart to escape. In the center, there's still the tug of war between the big, I guess you could say, the big Allied artillery blob and the big Axis artillery blob. Axis artillery blob, which contains so far 2 pieces, so it's not really that much of a blob, but the Allied one has become very formidable indeed, thanks to the support of, well, the base howitzers, field howitzer, ML20, 52mm from Lower Koala. Of course, he's got the terror tactics, and 2 Katyushi, and of course also there was the mortar pit, but not anymore. So we have very, very strong artillery force for the Allies that's really pounding on the Axis position. Especially the ML20 is going to be useful because of its ability to deal a lot of damage to trucks. And right now, I mean, the Axis also has its 2 mortar half-tracks, but the mortar half-tracks have an advantage, which is their mobility, so they can kind of just pop around all over and do what they will. Did you just cancel the barrage? That's sad. Anyway, Bong also has a lot of munitions for incendiary mortar barrages, which normally are quite expensive, but considering the amount of munitions he's got, he can use those pretty liberally, I would say. More Katyusha fire coming through. At this point, the Centaur is in a bad position, getting hit by Raketenwerfers, Stugs, and... oh, actually, no. Jagdpanzers and Panthers is not a good thing. But, I mean, Jagdpanther and Panther is an interesting combination because it's not like the Allies have so many medium tanks coming through. In fact, Royal Koala has used most of his fuel on artillery. John Bravo so far has a Sherman, but he's going to go on the right side with it. And on the right side, a Sherman is a very good idea. Sturmpanther has 224 fuel in the bank. Might be saving up for the Crocodile later on just to get that heavy support. So, oh damn, there goes that Mapax-wagon, unfortunately. trying to steal the infantry support gun with a smoke. That's a cute move, but unfortunately he's gonna go down from those Volksgrenadiers. Yeah, right now the Stuart is in chicken coop and is gonna be able to destroy the mortar half-tracks. Well, at least one of them, with of course shell shock. And what are you doing? Kill it. Good. Hilarious. At this point, he's gonna have to escape from the Stug, but he is in a pretty bad spot. He might get saved by the smoke. It doesn't seem like John Bravo realizes what is happening. Yeah, he's probably gonna die. If he had tried to flank around, he might have been able to do that. Anyway, what I was saying is that these two anti-vehicle tanks, well, one of them is a tank destroyer, but these two anti-vehicle units are a big investment when it comes to fuel. The Yakpanzer is like 140, right? So, well, no, 135. I can never really remember that cost. And the Panther is 200, so that is not very cheap indeed. Ooh. Go Sherman! Go Sherman, go! It's America time. Aw. Damn. Lucky that he did not get shot while he was in the ice. Unfortunately for the Stug, wow, did he just hit a mine without damaging the engine? That's incredibly lucky. But he's still dead because of all the AT guns and Sherman chasing him down like a dog. Yeah, see, like, all this anti-vehicle doesn't really have any work. They're unemployed right now. So the unemployed tank destroyer syndrome is basically striking again for the Germans. Right now, it seems like, oh, okay, Lord just went for special operations, which is a pretty decent choice, to be honest, because he's got a Panther. Pairing it up with a command Panther is gonna basically make him... Ooh, that's 2 howitzers coming through, and that is a precision bombing strike. So we'll see the death of this. Yep. Looks like, yeah, the Allied air superiority is coming through for them. And right now, yeah, basically, other than a few actions against minor enemy units like the Sherman, it's not like these tank destroyer units and anti-tank vehicles really have much to do. Like, they're just gonna sit here, get sniped a little bit by AT guns, back away because they can't deal with the AT guns. And of course, the Axis don't really have any ways to deal with the anti-tank guns because they're inferior when it comes to artillery. So their indirect fire is going to be pounding on them, and they're not going to have any way of actually pounding back on the anti-tank guns and the enemy artillery. So what the Germans perhaps should have done instead of going with a Panther is maybe go with a couple of Stukas. Yeah, a little bit of a radical choice on the other direction. It would counter all the light artillery units that can be easily destroyed, like the Katyusha. The Katyusha, if you get direct hit by a Stuka, it's gonna die. It's gonna counter anything that the Brits can come up with. It's gonna counter the anti-tank guns, and it's gonna counter, if you can get close enough, the howitzer as well. Although the howitzer is getting sort of countered by the other howitzer, so that's pretty okay. So that's why Bong was actually saving up all those units of manpower. Well, I mean, he's still floating, but he's definitely aware of the need for artillery. At this point, he's finally getting some. But the problem is, Royal Koala has a lot of munitions in his stockpile. So as you can see, other than the ML-20 just completely sending a steel rain into the area, exploding every kind of unit that's trying to repair anything, here comes the bombing strikes, destroying both of the howitzers. So the Il-2 Sturmovix doing what they do best and stürming all over the Axis artillery. Another attempt at a howitzer is going to come through, and that's going to be the end of Bong's manpower reserve. So after this, there's going to be nothing that he can do to stop all of the Allied artillery from completely raining down on him and destroying him. And once he's gone, the rest of the Axis is also going to be in trouble because I don't see any artillery units that can deal with what is happening from the other Axis players. I mean, there's a couple of support guns, 3 of them, but that's not enough. And as you can see right now, the constant barraging is coming into play, and here comes a lot of Allied troops streaming through the gaps, essentially, in the Allied defenses, or sorry, the Axis defenses, and getting a lot of nice damage off. The problem for the Allies is the VP situation. Of course, right now, with the amount of artillery that they have and the amount of control that they have over the right side, because again, yeah, sending sort of specialized units onto a secondary flank doesn't really work out too much. They're going to get forced away by the much more well-rounded Allied force that there is on the side. It's just not working out. So the Allies are going to have the right side. The Allies are going to have a decent shot at keeping the center. Of course, not really enough to consider it Allied territory, but they're going to have a better shot at it than they did before. This VP situation isn't going to be all that bad. Of course, here comes also a priest from the infantry company. So the amount of Allied artillery firepower is going to be increasing even further. The Sherman is still around, and at this point, Sturmpanzer has 620 munitions and concentrated fire operation. So even if the Axis have something like this, if the concentrated fire operation gets a little bit of line of sight, perhaps from the major recon, perhaps from... Well, Royal Claw doesn't really have any recon. But yeah, basically only the major recon at this point. Or maybe, I don't know. He could try to do something like autistic with hold the line, like getting the planes to come through, but that would be expensive. Of course, yeah, there's basically no other way of getting recon for the Allies right now. That's a bit of a weakness, but I mean, they should be fine with John Bravo, because John Bravo doesn't really have the need to spend his munitions in any kind of other way. And so here comes the major recon. And Sturmpanzer is going to have line of sight, immediately drops down the concentrated fire operation, which might not only destroy the LEFH with its first round, which is usually very accurate, it's also probably going to deal a little bit of damage to this battle headquarters, because the second and third round for this thing aren't nearly as accurate as the first one, as you can see, nearly pinpointing the artillery gun and destroying it. We'll see later what the effects of that barrage were. And right now, as you can see, the Stugs are in trouble because they basically have no infantry support because of all the artillery and because of the Allied infantry superiority. So with the basically absence of medium combatants for the Axis that can deal with multiple threats, yeah, these Stugs can't really do too much without infantry support. And they can't have infantry support if the artillery doesn't deal with the Allied artillery. So that's why, damn, as you can see, even more carnage coming through from Allied indirect fire. This is why you need to be very, very careful if you're playing the Axis and team games. And this is why you don't really spam out those tank destroyers, because right now the offensive capabilities of the Axis, again, as I said, are pretty low. Finally, a Stuka comes through, but it's a little late, and it's from Lorges, who could have used those resources to go with a Command Panther. You know, one of those great medium armor units. It can really help out. I mean, because the Command Panther can help out giving some bonuses to the other Panther, which will not only help against vehicles, they're also going to help against infantry with the pintle-mounted machine gun. So the Command Panther, normal Panther pair is going to be a lot more effective than just the Panther plus something else. I mean, the Stuka is a good choice, but I feel like Duffman could have gone for a Stuka. He's going for a KT, of course. He's got a third truck, and he's going to set that up. But, I mean, the KT is going to be okay, honestly. The KT would be a very good choice, because also the Allies are lacking in AT, as I said earlier. They're not going to be as vulnerable to the KT, however, as the Axis right now are to the Allied artillery. So the KT is going to have to do very, very well. And considering the small amount of infantry support and just in general support that the Axis can give to the KT, I don't think this is going to end up very, very well. Especially because even just one satchel charge on that thing is going to mean its end, because the Allies then are going to be able to concentrate not only tank destroyers, but also artillery fire on that thing and probably smash it. So right now, as you can see, all of the German trucks are being completely demolished. Right now, these Stugs are in a very bad way. They managed to get the kill on the Su-85, which is, of course, their job. But that was a small job. Right now, that's not enough to make ends meet by the end of the month. Absolutely not. It's going to be worth, like, half of the rent. And, yeah, for what these Stugs are paying for, they're not really paying off for Bong. That's not good. And right now, on the left-hand side, there's a Crocodile absolutely smashing through the Axis sort of lighter defenses and allowing the Allies to capture this left-hand side. So, where the Stugs are needed, they're not. That's because, of course, these things are not very versatile. They're not very mobile. I mean, the Stugs are decently mobile, as well as is the Jagdpanzer. That's not a problem with the German tank destroyers, but still, it's not really as versatile as the Axis need. And, of course, their centers just keeps getting pounded by artillery. At this point, however, Blessing in the Skies, all of their like useful things that were in range of the artillery are dead. But it looks like the Allies are just moving up with their Katyushas and starting to pound the rear lines, of course, as well. Panther comes through on the left-hand side, forces away the Croc, and allows the Raketenwerfer to actually capture, along with the help of a sector artillery, funnily enough. That's a bit of a waste of 200 munitions. On the right side, we have a massive force of OKW infantry coming through. Of course, the problem with this would be the Katyushas, but the Katyushas have just fired on the center, so this is a pretty smart timing from Duffman. Of course, pretty good player, manages to get the best of a worst situation and get some harassment off. But the problem is, of course, this stolen MG42 from earlier, in fact, 2 stolen MG42s are going to be able to put his push into the drinker and absolutely just stop it with sheer might of suppression. Even 3 stolen MG42s. That's why you don't send a player with only MG spam on one side, because if he gets flanked and he gets his MG stolen, then those go into the enemy. If they were in the center supported by OKW Grenadiers, the chances of those MGs actually being stolen would have been a lot lower. And right now, it looks like in the center, yeah, the Volksgrenadiers are trying to come through and get some good captures maybe, but it's not working out. The Su-85 is in the area. It's in a precarious spot, though. So it's also going to be able to force away the Panther, but there's a bit of a flanking attempt coming through from this Jagdpanzer. He might be able to take out one of the priests. Doesn't. And yeah, it looks like the strategic picture for the Germans is just not that good. We have allies flooding through on the left-hand side. Allies holding decently considering the situation on the right-hand side, where all the German tank destroyers are. And just no way of countering what is happening along the center with the Allied artillery. Once again, the Katyushas are now reloaded, and they're going to be able to get some good barrages down on the Germans. There's a Cromwell for Sturmpanther. Interesting choice. Did he go with any tactics? No. I feel like going with Anvil or Hammer at this point would be very beneficial for him. He's got a lot of resources. I don't know. I guess he just wanted a mobile anti-infantry. That's okay. That's okay overall. Once again, showing a lot more priority on versatility than just specialization for the Allies, at least. And right now, those 2 AT guns getting spotted for by the sniper are going to be able to get some good work done on that Panther, while the KT is on the field, of course, from Duffman. Right now, that Cromwell, unfortunately, is going to go down in a blaze of glory. Getting a good spotting run, I guess, on the Axis positions, and allowing the Allies to see that, well, there's not really anything that can challenge the Allied stranglehold on the VPs. Right now, there's basically no Axis units that can do anything about this, because all of the infantry is retreating, because the artillery units can't really deal with the Allied artillery, and because the big tanks are scared for their life. I mean, the King Tiger, of course, at this point is forced to act and charge at the Allied positions. It's not the best choice, but it's the only choice he can make. And right now, he's very vulnerable to a flank from both sides. The right side of his flanks is protected by only a Jagdpanzer, and the left side is protected by nothing. He's lucky that the Allied vehicles right now are back at base repairing, but here comes the Su-85 back on the field. The Crocodile is soaking up the damage quite well. Main gun destroyed, but it's going to be able to escape and get repaired. The anti-tank guns, the 6-pounders, are basically working down those Axis tanks. There goes one of the Stuks. There's a T-34-76 on the field, going to be able to flank around that KT at need. And right now, as you can see, the Axis infantry is trying to come and help, but the Katyushas are reloaded, and so they're going to be able to smash down their rockets on the German infantry and at least force them to retreat, if not outright wipe them. No wipes, but at least the Axis infantry is forced to back off. And on the right side, it seems like the mortar half-tracks are being completely destroyed by Sherman, because the Shugs were first to come in and help out the KT. And they themselves right now are without help and at the mercy of these penals. They're going to have to retreat as quickly as their little engines allow them to. Left side, Volksgrenadiers tries to come in and capture this point. They might even be able to do that if it were not for this MG42. So the MG42 is going to suppress them out, and of course that's going to allow these infantry sections to finish them off. On the right side, the Stug has managed to stop the Sherman rampage, not before it took out both of those mortar half-tracks, which have soaked up quite a lot of fuel. And as you can see, anytime this thing gets a damaged engine, it's exposed to all manner of artillery and airstrikes. There it goes from the Su-85, finishing off the KT after the bombing strike from the L2 managed to take down most of its HP. And at this point, even the Panther can't really do too much about that. And it's probably going to be over. So overall, better use of resources gives the Allies the win. There wasn't really any kind of major difference in unit micro between the two teams, but the Allies just sent their units where they could do their best. As you can see, the American player with his versatile early to mid game units went on the right side, which was easier for him to hold because it's closer to the base. And of course, he was able to destroy the very inflexible MG spam slash mortar half-track slash Stoogs for Bong. Then, also with that help, he managed to come in and get some harassment done on the center, get some flanking maneuvers, with the help of Sturmpanther, of course. Sturmpanther, with his Brits, was able to hold down the center with mortars for the sort of mid-early game. When the Germans started to really come in with a lot of support guns, he, instead of just inflexibly continuing to spam out SimCities, switched into a more supportive role with anti-tank guns, waiting for the heavy tank, and just using that sniper to great effect. 21 kills, but a lot of veterancy, also a lot of spotting done on this game. And then, of course, helping out with the infantry in the center, left, and right sides, because he was all over the map. That was very good. Thus letting Royal Koala, with his Soviets, just spam out those artillery units, because he had a nice stable front line in the form of Sturmpanther and in the form of John Bravo, who were able to hold the line for him. And those Katyushas and ML-20s, they managed to basically demolish all of the German, defenses in the center with all the trucks and all the support guns. They just were outranged at that point. The Germans instead just kind of tried a little bit of everything and nothing really went their way. They sent their guy with the MGs that was basically unable to hold down a flank by himself onto a flank by himself to fight off against the Americans. In the center, we had the Germans, who were basically without support, only with infantry for most of the game. They had a few support guns and a few Raketenwerfers. That really was never enough to hold down the center stably. The left-hand side, which was supposed to be the Germans' fortress, kept getting harassed because there was basically nothing that they could do to stop the artillery from just demolishing anything that they put there. That's, I think, the reason why they never really garrisoned this place with any units, or sent a player to just hold it down permanently. That left with two OKW players in the center that were just slowly but surely pushed back by the Allied artillery wall. They didn't double down on the artillery to counter the Allied artillery, which ended up meaning that the Allies had indirect fire superiority. Then they didn't double down on medium armor to try to hunt down the artillery and get some offensive power back on their, on their side of the field to bring the fight to the enemy. They stuck with defensive armor like Panthers and Jagdpanzers, this is not Company Fears 1, and Stoogs, which not really have a lot of offensive power nor any way of dealing with enemy infantry. They didn't double down on that either, because they didn't go with that Panther command tank. They did not try to go for a big heavy tank until Duffman decided to go with the King Tiger before he was quite undecided as to what he should go, perhaps thinking about either a Jagdtiger or the King Tiger, or, I don't know, perhaps going with Panthers of his own after his Jagdpanzer, or maybe spamming more Jagdpanzers. He wasn't really sure. Bottom line, no real medium armor on the field, so no real capacity to come in, get some flanks off on this artillery line, which was very vulnerable to something like a Panther flank or a Panzer IV flank. This also allowed the Allied infantry to just kind of, as I said, swarm through the center and put these big anti-tank units out of their jobs. They just didn't have anything to shoot at for most of the game. As you can see, the Panther did manage to get 18 infantry kills and almost vet 2. But that was all through anti-infantry. Imagine, well, this thing was alive for like, what, 20 minutes? No, not 20 minutes, maybe 15. Let's see, when was it built? 17 minutes. So yes, it's been on the field for almost 20 minutes. And it's only at vet 1.5 with 19 kills, one of them being a vehicle. It's a Panther. It's an expensive unit. If this was a Panzer IV, and it had managed to survive this entire time, it would have something like 40 kills, and it would be less expensive. I mean, of course, situationally, it's not an objective statement, but I mean, you can do a lot more with this kind of a unit than what Lord just did. This is because the Allies played smart against it, and also because he didn't really double down on it as he perhaps should have done. If he had gotten that Command Panther, even with his low sort of infantry forces, he could have put together a nice assault force. They had the left side for most of the game. They could have come through the left side, tried to flank around the Allied artillery, as they had done earlier, might I point out, with their infantry. Get around, get a raid, essentially, destroy a few things, back off, maybe lose the Panther, maybe lose the Command Panther, but in the meantime you could have managed to put in a lot of damage on the Allied units. But they didn't really have time to think of that, I think. They just kind of were tunnel-visioned into the central approach of headbutting into anti-tank guns with their Panthers, not really doing anything. I mean, yeah, it did get 18 infantry kills, but, I mean, this Volksgrenadier, had it survived long enough, would have gotten 18 infantry kills too. And this thing does not cost 200 fuel. This thing does not cost 200 fuel, and this thing does not cost 200 fuel either. So you could have accomplished more with less if you had just used your resources a little bit better. But overall, well played by both sides. Extremely well played by the Allies, as shown by the end result. I want to thank y'all for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. I will see you soon. As always, I'll just remember you, if you want your replay to be casted, well, you can just kind of send it to me. The link will be in the email so that you can... Well, the link for the email will be in the description so that you can send your replay files over there, and I'll check them out when I can. So I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.